Isolating some of these little things is low-hanging fruit that I can address without any physiological adaptations. There's so much to be gained there, especially at the level I'm climbing at.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Struggle Climbing Show. It's me, Ryan Devlin, your Weekend Warrior host for another Weekend Warrior episode here. I love these conversations so much. These Weekend Warrior episodes, if you're new to the show here, is just me connecting with regular climbers out there. I talk to a lot of pros and a lot of coaches on this show, which I love, but I also love talking to just regular weekend warriors or weekday warriors, whatever the case may be, just people who are out there hustling and trying hard and just doing all they can to level up and enjoy the sport that they love so much. And I'm really excited for this one here because my friend Jeff is on the show, and Jeff has an interesting story, as we all do. I guess we all have interesting stories in some regard, but Jeff, as a climber, has an interesting story because he started climbing in the 1980s, back in the 80s. Just a couple of unks having a conversation about climbing in the 80s out here, although I didn't climb in the 80s. But Jeff did with one of our friends, our mutual friend, Matt Samet, past guest of the show. They were in high school together and they started climbing. So some great stories from that to start this podcast. But then Jeff took a lot of time off when he got married and had kids and took like 30 years, maybe more than 30 years off climbing, and now has gotten back into it. And it's been really interesting to follow his journey as he's gotten back into climbing and is climbing now almost as hard as he was back in the 80s and 90s. And I think he's going to surpass those days pretty soon here. And so a lot of insights to take away from this, not just on like training. Of course, we dive into a ton of training and how he's like staying strong and fit, but also we focus a lot on the things that can be done that don't require you to get much stronger or even any stronger or fitter. So a lot of focus on technique, on reflection, on videoing sessions, coaching friends, these like little kind of hacks, if you will, that Jeff's figured out now over the years that has helped him to improve on his climbing in a session or in a day rather than like months. You know, like we could get a lot stronger over the course of months, or we could just get a lot smarter and a lot better at what we're trying to do and unlock things today. And so I really loved that aspect. So this is kind of broken into two halves here. The first half, we kind of look back and a bit of his journey up until today. And then the second half, we focus a lot on what he's doing now to level up as a climber, training predominantly indoors for just a handful of outdoor days a year. But he really loves pushing himself indoors. In fact, indoor projects are just as exciting to Jeff as the outdoor ones, which I think is really cool and relatable for those of us who just mostly get out to the gym or entirely get out to the gym. So that was really cool to explore. And then Jeff touched on something that we've never touched on in this show, which is this concept of intuitive eating. And Jeff was an intuitive eating coach, a nutritionist for some time, and just had a lot to say about that. And if you're not sure what intuitive eating is, I think you're going to find that part of the conversation really interesting. So this whole thing slaps, as the kids say. And then on the backside, I'll tell you a little bit about where I'm at right now. Bit of a struggle fest, y'all. I just got back from Australia. And as you know, I was off in Australia for a couple of weeks. In fact, I've been gone from my house for 21 days because we went to Los Angeles first and then we went to Australia. And I got one climbing day in on that. And I thought I was going to do a ton of training, but I did not. Like I had the intention of training while I was away, but I like threw my back out just days before this trip. And oh God, it was such a struggle. It's actually been a pretty rough and humbling few weeks. And I'm just happy to be home. And now my back feels better. And I just started climbing and training again. And it all hurts. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of like starting fresh. I was going super hard before this vacation. And now it's just like a full reset. I think it'll all come back pretty quickly because I was in like great shape and conditioning before I left. But anyway, I'll talk more about that on the backside. You don't have to hear me blather on about that now. I'm happy to be home. I'm psyched. Thank you all for giving me a little bit of time away from this podcast. I missed you. I hope you missed me as well, but I definitely missed you. And, I should mention this as well. Jeff is my partner on Intentional Climber. So Jeff developed Intentional Climber, and when I started working on some things on Patreon with this like strength cohort that I did, Jeff, who's a Patreon member and was part of the strength cohort, reached out and said, hey, I think this could be good for that. And it was in a very like early rudimentary stage at that time, but I played around with it and I was like, yeah, actually, I think this could be great. It's kind of like the tool that I've been looking for my own life. almost like a digital version of my paper journal, if you will, with then like a bunch of other features. And so anyway, we've been for many, many, many months now, we've been working on Intentional Climber, the app, which is now out and you can try for free for a couple of weeks. Many of you who are listening to this right now are probably users of the app. So thank you. We've got users now in 29 countries, at least the last time I checked. So that's really cool. But anyway, Jeff is a developer, he's a programmer and a climber. And so we've been working closely on that together. And then I was just really inspired by his story as a weekend warrior climber who's now just back and pushing his limits as a climber who took quite a bit of time off, and just a lot of takeaways in this one. So anyway, we'll dive into this conversation here. I'll check back in with you on the other side of this. So let's chalk up right now with our weekend warrior guest, Jeff Ashe. What does your shirt say?
It says,
Gravity and I respectfully disagree.
Yeah, Robin got it for me.
That's great. Well, good. I respectfully disagree with gravity today as well. And good, man. Well, I'm excited. You know, it's funny because I've had a couple weekend warriors on the show that I've known, and it's always so exciting to just kind of put on the interviewer cap because I know a bit about your background as a climber and as a person, but not a lot. And so I'm glad we were able to find the time to sit down and chat through this climbing life of yours. Secondary to most of our conversations are talking about programming and development and intentional climber, which we'll get into in this conversation, no doubt. But but your climbing life predates your programming life and certainly your intentional climber life by quite a bit, I think. And so maybe that's a good place for us to start, for me as well as for the audience. I guess we'll hit some demographics. All right, let's hit some demographics first. How old are you?
I'm 54, so I'll be 55 in October.
And where do you live?
In Houston, Texas, the worst possible place to live for outdoor climbing. That's not too bad. We have it 3 hours away, but right now it's already utterly miserable.
Yeah, and yet you were out climbing like a couple days ago.
Yeah, Saturday we went out and I checked after the fact, it was 90 degrees and 90% humidity on limestone. And it's polished limestone. Yeah, it was bad. So
how did you hold on to any? There isn't enough chalk in the world to hold on to limestone at those temperatures.
It was wild. So you'd stick your hands in your chalk, and it would just come out like caked to your hand because of the moisture in the air. Right. And yeah, but it was. We got in 3 510s and 4 11s and a 7 to retrieve gear from his kids were out there with us too, his young kids, my buddy. And yeah, so his wife took the kids all day, which she is an absolute saint, and just let the two of us climb all day. So that was fun. But yeah, it was terrible. I climbed horribly, but I got on the project I've been looking at for a while and got to feel the holds. And now I'm really psyched because it's a really good project that actually one of my old climbing partners put up. And so he had recommended it when I got back into climbing, which I'm sure we'll touch on here soon. He's like, you got to get on this. And it was when I had just started back and was barely doing 510s again.
Well, good on you for getting out there. I mean, don't let anybody say that you can't climb in summer conditions because you're out there doing it in Texas. So that's good advice to me because I turn into a bit of a baby when it hits 80 degrees here in Kentucky. But yeah, we'll talk about that. I think we'll get into, your mix of indoor versus outdoor and what some of your goals are. But continuing down just some of the background information here, what do you consider yourself in terms of climbing, bouldering, sport, trad, that kind of thing?
Definitely sport, and it's been that way since I started climbing originally. I always enjoyed trad and bouldering, but bouldering for me was training for sport climbing as a necessity. So I couldn't climb on ropes. It was, didn't have time to get out and do the whole roped climbing thing, so we bouldered. And then still now, I go through phases. Sometimes I'm enjoying the bouldering, but really, if I'm honest, I'm really just using it as a way to get stronger on rock so I can route climb better. And that's why I use the tension board. Actually, the tension board's interesting because I have found that to be really enjoyable just in and of itself. But yeah, definitely sport climbing.
Good. Well, we'll unpack a lot of that as we dive in. But you have had an interesting and a long journey as a climber. How old were you when you started climbing?
My parents got me a climbing class in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is where I grew up, when I was 16, and it was for my 16th birthday. The guy took me out one day bouldering, and then the next day on a 5'4" polished granite slab up in the Sandia Mountains. And from there, I got hooked. The way I got interested in climbing was we went to Cave of the Winds or somewhere near Colorado Springs on a family vacation, and we were in the gift shop, and I saw this book, Rockcraft, from Royal Robbins. And him on the front with his old like hemp triple strand wrapped rope with wearing corduroy knickers and pitons. And I got the book and read through it, and it just sounded so interesting. I couldn't wait to get pitons and start hammering stuff in and all that stuff. And I found out it was a little different now, but it was a lot more fun. But anyway, that's how I got interested. And then my parents got me that class, and then I think I took a lead class right after that one. You know, that's natural. You climb one day and then you go ahead and learn how to lead climb the next day on trad without cams. We didn't have cams back then. This was the 80s. So they were kind of a brand new thing. And from there, I actually ran into somebody that and I know a lot of our listeners probably know, Matt Samet. We ran into each other at the local bouldering area, found out we went to the same high school together, and then just started climbing basically every day from then on until Matt moved away for college. So
Samet grew up in Albuquerque as well then?
Yeah. We went to the same high school and didn't even know each other. We ran in totally different crowds. We were totally different. But yeah, we really connected and bonded over the climbing. And he was basically my mentor. I probably belayed him on his first 5'11", but he had been working with the Mountain Rescue Club there in Albuquerque, so he had experience from like grown men on how to climb safely. And so I had the benefit of starting with another fellow stupid teenager who actually knew kind of what he was doing, and so that was really nice. So I had that advantage.
Well, you sent me a picture. I'll have to see if I can get it back from you, and if you're willing to let me share it here. But it's you and Matt and I think a couple others, and the attire is what really catches the eye, the uniform of the day for you climbers. Can you just paint a picture of this photo for us?
Yeah, I think on that one I may have been wearing just shorts, but my preference was my black and pink Lycra tights and shirtless, of course, and my Sportiva Megas.
It's kind of like the Alan Watts attire from the day, and like a lot of the French climbers as well, like the Lycra, no shirt, just golden gods of climbing. Everybody's very, very skinny, very undernourished, probably.
I had the flowing blonde hair and down to mid back, and Matt had the ripped, torn up sweatpants with his butt hanging out. Yeah, that was his appearance. But yeah, it was definitely a different time.
I really do want to bring things current and hear about your climbing journey more recently, which I know of and I find very inspiring. But just like, what's the vibe back there? I mean, this is like late 80s, I guess, and maybe going into the early 90s, and just kind of give us a sense for the climbing scene and the areas you were at, and just kind of what stood out from those earlier days.
There were a lot fewer people doing it. So you'd go to a sport climbing area, and often you were the only people there at the most popular crag. And even just this past Saturday, the worst weather conditions, it was full of a bunch of college kids and stuff climbing. But back then, it was very common to go to an area and not see anybody else. And so,
what areas? Where were you going?
So around Albuquerque, there's a bouldering area on granite boulders that was 15 minutes from our house. So we'd often pop over there after school and climb till dark. There are some top roping areas within 20 or 30 minutes on basalt, and then granite and some limestone also. And then within an hour, there was welded tuff, like the stuff out at Smith Rock, kind of a little really tiny miniature version of Smith Rock.
Yeah.
With that same kind of stuff. More granite. There's multi-pitch granite up to 12 pitches long. That was 45 minutes. You were at the top of the mountain and you just hiked down and could do multi-pitch trad. So we'd do that when it was too hot down to do our sport climbing. And
wow, there's so much more around Albuquerque than I was aware of. I mean, it just sounds like just like a mecca, every discipline available.
Yeah, there are so many different things. And, sport climbing was still pretty new at that time. So bolts were farther apart, and often they were 1/4-inch button heads, stuff like that. And so they weren't the best. And
you didn't want to fall very much.
Yeah. And then trad gear, you're replacing hexes and nuts. I think I had one number 2 Camelot, and Matt had 2 or 3 Metolius TCUs, and that was about it, other than just our rack of nuts and everything. Racks. We each had quite a few things, but they were all the old stuff. So
then bringing things a little bit more ahead on the timeline, this is when you were in your teens. Did you climb into your 20s? How far did you take it? How far were you pushing yourself as a climber in those earlier days?
Just a little bit. I went into, probably by the time I was about 20, I was starting to move away from it. I got into playing the guitar. My hands at the time, climbing 7 days a week, pretty much 6 or 7 days a week. There were days I couldn't even make a fist. And so it was kind of impacting the guitar, and I kind of gotten into that, and I met my first wife, and just that whole thing. We ended up getting married, having kids, and I just basically quit climbing completely by the time I was probably 22, give or take, 21, 22. And at that time, I wasn't climbing with Matt anymore, so I really wasn't doing much outdoors. There was an indoor gym, and I was still climbing there a lot. And I had been with Matt, I'd hit kind of mid 512 range in sport. Nice. And then I did set a comp route locally one time because I won the comp. And so as a reward, you got to set the next comp. So that was kind of
cool.
An interesting thing. And I accidentally set something that the local crusher said was easily 513, and he didn't think that I could do it. And I had to go back and do it in front of people. So it was... So I think I was getting close to starting to climb 513, but didn't really realize it. I know I was very strong. I could hold one hand, 2-finger pockets with one hand, and all of that kind of stuff without really any issue.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you really progressed, and especially in those earlier days, you were cutting your teeth a lot on outdoor rock. But then life happened, and I think that's very relatable. Yeah. Life happens to a lot of us. You get into, whether it's a college job, a relationship, family, kind of all of the above. It sounds like for you. You had kids, and so you weren't even going to the gym and faffing about. You had just kind of fully stepped away from it, or were you checking in on climbing from time to time?
I'd say the only time I checked in was I went to a summer camp shortly after I quit, maybe within a couple of years, and we took the kids climbing, and I did a 5'10" lie back crack in my tennis shoes on top rope because I was still I was still pretty strong, even though I wasn't doing it anymore. And then probably 10 years later, I went to an indoor climbing gym with the kids from church, took the teens that I was working with, and I did a little bouldering, and I may have done one other time like that. So it was nothing even almost remotely semi-regular, not even semi-regular. It was nothing.
How about that? So then when did you start back up, and why?
Yeah, it was 2024. January 2024, and I'd been doing
how many years off do you reckon that was?
Oh man, that would have been 32 years, something like that. Oh. Yeah.
And you started back up, and you picked right back up where you left off, 12 plus.
Not quite. I did do my first 511 within 2 weeks of starting back.
Oh, did you really?
That's awesome. Yeah, but it was a vertical, all crimps. And that was what I grew up on. So my fingers were, it did not feel great on my joints. I knew I was kind of pushing my limit, but I knew how to climb it. So it actually surprised me that I still remembered how to move on the rock pretty well, weighting my feet and using them to drive myself forward, and have a high step and rock over onto a foot, and all of those things kind of came back real quickly. And
how nice. Because so often for beginners, especially kind of adults who get into climbing, and I didn't start climbing until I was 30, but it's the technique that really has to come a long way. And you get those noob gains because you start to learn how to move over rock or plastic, but it just, there's so many things when it comes to technique and the feel and the kind of quote unquote rules of climbing, the things that you just learn that you already had in there. You just kind of had to dust them off, and then your body had to catch back up. And I'm curious, so in 2024, when you stepped back into that gym and, probably got a new pair of climbing shoes, you weren't throwing on the old EBs, I don't think. What was it that drew you back to the sport?
Well, I got interested in doing ninja. And so I was doing ninja the couple of years prior to that. And then my back started giving me trouble, and I think it was just from all the awkward falling from flying around and doing basically playing like a kid on the playground. So I decided I really needed to stop doing that. And I was really bummed because I had shoulder surgery and everything just so that I could continue doing ninja because it was aggravating a shoulder. Found out I had a torn rotator cuff, went and had surgery for it, rehabbed it, worked all the way back up so I could do things. And then I had gallbladder removed and, a bunch of things all happened in this 1 year period. So I was so psyched to get back to ninja. And then within a few months, I just was like, this is not going to work for my back. So then my wife actually said, why don't you check out the climbing gym if there's one around? You used to like that. And I was like, I hadn't even thought of that. And so I'm like, yeah, I could totally top rope. Yeah, that'd be fine on my back.
Yeah.
So got back in with the intention of just top roping. And then now I boulder all the time and lead climb and back climbing outdoors. And wife wasn't the most thrilled with it, but it was kind of a gradual process. And now she's okay with it.
You slowly heated up the pot of water so she didn't know she was being cooked
exactly.
Back into the climber lifestyle. And the irony, of course, is that so many of the highest performing ninjas are climbers, right? It's just so much in the grip in the upper body and all of that. So you were kind of in a good spot, like getting that ninja training, of course, not ultimately very good for your back. When you got into climbing, I'm sure you had developed a lot of that upper body again.
Yeah, definitely. And I have to say, right after starting, one of the first times I bouldered, I nailed a big lache boulder problem too, because I actually knew how to do a lache. So it was kind of cool. It was like a V5 lache problem. And I was like really impressed that I could do this, that a lot of much stronger climbers were struggling with, but I knew how to do a lache from ninja.
That's amazing.
So
that's such a cool compliment, just now that I think about it, for what you had, because you had talked about when you came back, you did a 511, but it was just like a vert crimp and you were working on technique and the mobility and the rockovers. But that is really anti-style or antithesis of dynamic modern style bouldering, laches, run and jumps, paddle dynos, all of these things. But that is informed by ninja. And so it wasn't premeditated, but the fact that you had this more traditional background of technique and standing on feet and pulling on crimps combined with this like super modern dynamic training of moving from ninja, that's like the best possible crash course you could have to modernize yourself to be a climber these days.
Yeah, you would think that, but I'm very hesitant to climb dynamically. So I grew up in the very static, climbing. I think one of the last routes that Matt and I put up together was a 12C granite slab that some people have been calling 13A now. I don't know. We didn't know what we were doing anyway.
For me, when it comes to slab, anything with a 12 might as well be a 13 or a 14. Like, I don't even know how you discern the difference between a C or a D or whatever. Like, it's just got to be freaking hard.
Well, and at that time, going back to one of the questions you asked, how it was different, 513 was not a common thing. There were not very many 513 climbers out there. And
it'd get you on a magazine.
Yeah. So you didn't just say, oh, this is probably 513. I mean, we hadn't done enough hard stuff to know whether it was or not. I just know it was super dicey. And, we basically put in 4 bolts on with a hand drill in granite. And the first 40 feet or something was the hard part. So it had 4 bolts. And then the last 20 or 30 feet was only 510 plus. So we just didn't bolt it. And that was how a lot of routes were put up back then. So the bolting was significantly different in those times.
Oh man, it's amazing. It really works on the head game. And so that's good. Let's bring it current and talk about when you kind of got back in your rebirth in climbing, if you will. What stands out as the biggest struggle for you?
The age difference is part of it, but I do actually feel pretty young. Like I really don't feel like I'm 50 years old. It just doesn't register in my brain that I'm really any different than I was in my 20s. I will say that a good 40 pounds of extra body weight on the same height frame has definitely been different because that definitely has an impact. As far as the struggle too is just not having the same amount of time that I had to devote to it at that time. We climbed 6 or 7 days a week from every spare moment we had outside of school, and even we ditched so much school too to go climb. And so we just were climbing all the time, and it's definitely different now. Different not being able to get out on real rock So my real rock outdoor climbing has been very limited. But really, it's been great for me because my kids are grown. So and I work from home. So I'm able to put climbing in whenever I want for the most part. And my wife doesn't work and she's home. And so we spend a lot of time together. And so if I want to take a Saturday and just go do my own thing, I'm not cutting into our together time because I've been working all week. So it's really interesting. I don't feel like it's been too much of a struggle other than just progressing up through the grades has been slower. But I have to say it's been somewhat intentional too, because when I was younger, we were climbing all the time. My fingers were hurting all the time when we just slap tape on them, glue flappers down with super glue or whatever, and just keep climbing. And now I've been much more intentional about progressing slowly, doing the things that I know are going to be a way of doing so in a healthy way long term, because I'm looking forward to it long term in that perspective.
This episode is supported by Arcteryx, and I'm going to be out in Squamish, BC again this August, just as I was last year, for the Arcteryx Academy. And I'm telling you, if you haven't been out for an academy, if you have a chance to get out for an academy, I could not recommend it more. I just had the best time last year out there. Arcteryx does it right. They bring in their entire athlete team. So basically like every superstar climber is just walking around the streets of Squamish. They put on clinics. They have incredible film premieres and programming for a few nights. This year, the Academy is taking place August 21st through 23rd in Squamish. I'm going to be hosting some of the programming. I'm really excited about that. I'm going to be doing a couple live happy hour podcasts with friend of the show, Chris Kalous from the Enormocast. So Chris and I are going to be teaming up, doing a couple live podcasts, a bunch of giveaways, and then just hanging out and climbing and taking part in all of the incredible programming that Arcteryx puts on. And if you haven't been out to Squamish, it's just got it all. It's got world-class bouldering, single-pitch sport, trad, and then, of course, multi-pitch there on the Chief. I did a little bit of everything last year, and I'm going to do a little bit more of everything this year, and I would love to see you there. You can learn all about it over at arcteryxacademy.com. I'll see you in Squamish. All right, y'all, just want to take a quick second here to tell you about the shoes that I've been wearing to send some progies recently. And obviously, shoes are the most critical piece of equipment that we could have as rock climbers because that is what is making contact with the rock. And I've got two favorite shoes that Scarpa's making right now, one for my indoor progies and one for my outdoor ones. So first on the indoor progies, spending a lot of time on steep kilterboard climbs and also working on those really fun dynamic like comp style sets over at the gym. And the shoes that I've been using for that are the Furia Air. They're brand new, redesign, incredible color. I love the look with the red, black, and white in there. And I am telling you, they allow me to stick to the tiniest of holds or the smeariest of volumes. And that's because the Vibram Grip 2 rubber is incredibly sticky and the shoe itself is super, super soft. If you're an intermediate to advanced climber and you're looking for a shoe that will be incredibly responsive, man, am I loving those Furia Airs. You put them on and then you just don't even feel them. They're feather light and they fit like a glove. And then for the outdoor progies, well, if you saw my video of me sending Bulldog, my first V8 outside, I used my tried and true Instinct VSRs, which is a more supple version of their award-winning Instinct VS. I had a few really technical heel hooks on Bulldog, and these Instincts worked like a dream. They're also amazing on the really overhung pocket climbing out here at the Red River Gorge. I used that same shoe to send my 13A project, The Force, about a year ago. So that's it. The Furia Air and the Instinct VSRs, those are my go-to weapons right now. Check them out over on the Scarpa site. I'll put a link right down there in the show notes. And by the way, if you pick up a pair of shoes over at Scarpa and you live in North America, use code STRUGGLE at checkout and you'll get a top secret gift for free with your order. All that information's right there in your show notes. Scarpa, no place too far. Well, I want to kind of unpack a lot of this now as you're getting back into it. And, you know, one of the things we glanced past was your professional life. So why don't you tell us what you do? Obviously, you just said you work from home. What's the 9 to 5? Or maybe it's not a 9 to 5.
It pretty much is, yeah. I'm a software engineer. And actually, my software development predates my climbing, even my first time around, by a good 5 years. I've been programming since I was about 11. Yeah. So
That's
my friends were
incredible,
playing their
dude.
Ataris. You know, they were playing their Atari video games, and we had one, but I preferred the program when I was a 11-year-old kid. So got my first job professionally when I was 16 in high school, working for the university, doing some stuff for epilepsy research. And so then I got away from it for a few years and ended up getting back into it. But yeah, so that's what I do. I do software development and have been for basically my entire life, really.
So cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot even imagine the perspective that you've had. Like these just like tectonic shifts in how technology has changed. You know, what is it? What is it? Moore's law or whatever? Like every 7 years, everything doubles or whatever. Like you've had a lens on this just massive evolution and explosion in programming. How wild.
Yeah. I mean, my first computer, you plugged into your TV, that was your monitor. It had 4K of RAM, not meg, K.
Right.
And it didn't have a hard drive or floppy drive. You hit play and record on a tape recorder that was plugged in with cables to the audio jacks.
Yes.
And it saved your files to that using if you ever heard a fax machine, the sounds when you call up a fax machine, basically it recorded that on the tape as the data, and that's how you saved it on this original computer. And then now we have AI where I can tell it to do something, and it can generate an entire piece of software from a prompt kind of a thing. And and then everything in between. The internet, it used to be we had to buy a book to learn how to do something, and then you might have one chapter that was helpful. And just the shift, even just the internet coming in, it was like, wow, this is mind-boggling. And then now with AI, it's just a whole other level. And so
That's wild,
it's been
man.
amazing to see that change. But
Yeah, I mean,
that's how the world goes.
yeah, it is. I mean, we've seen that in other industries and areas as well, but it just seems it's just like so stark right now on the technology side. Just a couple of unks over here talking about fax machines and dial-up internet. All right,
Yeah.
all right,
Oh,
listeners.
no.
We'll get back to climbing here. I promise. Okay, so you've got the day job and mostly sedentary, I'm assuming. I mean, if you're programming, so you're just sitting at a computer for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
but I like to get up and around all the time, and I'm real intentional about that. And it's also just part of what's in me. If somebody's watching this on video, you'll probably see me kind of moving around a fair bit, and I tend to move all the time.
And then when do you get to the gym? So you're predominantly a gym climber, as we've established.
Yeah,
What's your
unfortunately.
gym setup like, and how often are you trying to get out there? Let's just talk through your training.
Yeah, we have we have several really nice gyms here in Houston, but I'm a member at one called Inspire, and we have one in one end of town and one at the other end, and I'm right in the middle, so I'm about 25 minutes from each one. And one opens at 6:30 a.m. for us on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday mornings. So we have a really good crew. We call the morning crew that all show up at 6:30, and we all climb together, and everybody's gets along well. Lots of different levels of climbing, and some of us climb outdoors too. And so I've managed to pair up with people and find outdoor partners after starting up again. So that's been really good. And then we have another gym, same company, but that has bigger walls and more climbing. So the bigger wall gym has walls up to 63 feet high. And then the other one has them up to 43. So we have lead climbing, bouldering, tension board. You can, if you're watching the video, that's behind me on my green screen. And yeah, so it's just basically a full featured thing.
Is that the TB1 I've seen you on?
Yeah, we've got a TV1, the old greasy wood holds, and
Oh my God,
I
dude.
love
Those things are heinous. The one time I've climbed on that thing, I was like, this might be more sandbag than the moon board. It was so hard.
It's fun. Yeah, it took me a while to get my first V0 when I started. So I was already climbing 511s at the gym.
Right, yeah, because it
on the
wasn't
routes.
V0, it was V3 or V4.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about kind of as you've gotten back into it, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're now climbing 512s, right, on lead at the gym.
Yeah, I've done some 512s at the gym as hard as I've done 12C according to the gym rating, but the one gym's a little soft. So I log it that way, but in reality, I know that I know what the 12C used to feel like, and it doesn't feel like it.
I got
that makes sense.
I mean, it's all relative, but basically, you took 30 years off, and you're back to climbing, really hard at a kind of advanced level, intermediate advanced level, if you're talking about kind of mid 12 plus. And as you reflect, I mean, what stands out the most for you with regard to getting back to that level, or just what you're doing right now? Like, you don't have all day, every day to train or to project. So what do you think is moving the needle for you the most in terms of getting you fit or keeping you injury free and helping you ascend through these grades like you are? It's
consistency. And then also being just really intentional and, plugging the app that we've been developing. I mean, I started working on that originally before contacting you as like, I wanted an app for training, and there wasn't anything that did what I wanted everything to do, all of the features that I wanted in there. And so started working on that. And it's because I really think being intentional has been a huge part of it. And as you know, my wife has a lot of health issues. And so like just this year alone, between January and June, she's spent over 60 days in the hospital overnight. And the year prior, I don't know how many the year prior, but this has been an ongoing thing for many years. And so being intentional, I often am not able to get in like my extra workouts that I have planned, but being intentional to work on the things that I am able to work on has been such a game changer. And for me personally, I'd say the biggest thing that's helped me a lot has been working on technique and being extremely intentional and reflective about the technique and what I want to do in each session. And that's where the app's been really helpful for me to reflect on what went well, what went wrong, what I should work on next time. And so I'll log those things in there, and it's really good to see those and be able to scroll back through and be reminded of it. So Tuesday, I fell off a project because I tried to move my hands before applying pressure on this sloping foothold. It's a big foothold, but it is sloping. And I rushed it, and I didn't set my foot, apply the pressure, and then move. I immediately tried to pull, and I grabbed this little crimp, and my feet, of course, just shot off the wall. And so I fell off. And so I was like, man, I know exactly what happened there. And so I wrote that down in my log. And so I think for me, that's been a real big part of it. It's really easy to get hung up on, okay, I need to get stronger fingers, which of course, having stronger fingers, more physical endurance is probably going to be helpful for me. But isolating some of these little things, this low-hanging fruit that I can address without any physiological adaptations, there's so much to be gained there, especially at the level I'm climbing at. Now, a higher level, I couldn't comment on a 513 climber as to whether they really do need to do that. But I think really everybody at every level, focusing on those things that are not relying on a physiological adaptation can be so helpful, because those physiological adaptations take so long to do, where me fixing a foot problem on a sloper and applying pressure, that's just a matter of focusing on doing the technique right, because I can do it correctly. I just sometimes forget. And so I can improve on that. That's something I can improve on literally from one attempt to the next. I've had that happen where I got totally gassed out on my first two attempts. My third attempt, I get to the top and I'm totally fresh. And this is all in one session with a 5-minute break between. I'm like, okay, I did not get stronger. I climbed better.
Yes.
And I figured out what was wrong and I fixed it. And I think that's how I've been progressing through, is I did have that background enough to know what I should be doing. And so I've been able to kind of break that down a lot more easily than maybe some people who just started at the same time, kind of from scratch.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I appreciate the emphasis there on the reflection and the soft skills, because every coach that I talk to really talks about and underscores how important it is for us to like physically journal and make these notes about kind of what's working and what we want to work on. That's why you and I, when we built out the Intentional Climber app, put those things in there.
Yeah,
so like after every session, it prompts you to do that, which is nice. It kind of forces that reflection, which then will help us to be more intentional on the next one. How are you programming that in your busy schedule? You said, sometimes certain workouts you're not going to be able to get to. And so how are you prioritizing your climbing sessions or your workouts, and what are the priorities for you?
I try and put in like 2 strength sessions a week. So I'll put that on there, and I'll plan them on the days that I'm not going to be climbing. And those, for me, my strength sessions are, up until fairly recently, they've been the things that get neglected. I'm kind of like, I don't have time, I just sort of drop them. I'm trying to be much more diligent now because it really is helping me a lot in just feeling better overall, like my overall health. So I'm trying to prioritize that more. But in general, what I do is I try and plan ahead what I'm going to work on in each session. So Saturdays, as an example, that's my bouldering day. And I intentionally go to the other gym that has the tension board because most of my friends live at the opposite end of town and it's almost an hour away for them to go there. So they don't go there every Saturday.
Right.
And Saturdays, I don't want to climb with anybody, not because I don't like the social time, but because I get distracted from what I'm trying to do and what I'm focusing on, which is I try and climb for an hour and a half or so on the tension board and then go boulder for another hour and a half. And then that's my focused session on strength. And then I plan out my climbing sessions based on how I'm feeling throughout the week and what I feel like I need to work on. So right now, one of the areas that I'm really struggling with is not so much fear of falling, but fear of blowing a clip from a bad hold or when I'm pumped. And so I'm really trying to focus on getting into body positions before I then try and clip. So one of my tendencies was to, as soon as I got the clipping hold, let's just start pulling up rope. Instead of saying, well, if I just make a little adjustment here, and drop a knee, put a foot up, sink down, something, I may not have to fight that and then desperately try and make that clip. And so there might be a session where I'm really focusing on that. Another thing that I've been working on lately is not adjusting my hands or my feet after I get them on the holds. So grabbing the holds. And, as you watch someone like Yanya or Adamandra or something like that, and they grab a hold, it's just, they grab that hold and it's set. They're not putting their foot and then kind of like wiggling it or shaking it. It's like it's set, and it might twist, but it's a very intentional kind of a movement. Yeah. And so working on those kinds of things. So I'll go into sessions where I'm not trying to climb hard. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stick to maybe 11, kind of mid 5'11", and every move I'm going to make sure that I don't move my feet. I don't adjust them, that I place them exactly where. So I'll work on things like that. And so a lot of my training is sort of ad hoc based on how I've been climbing. So I don't necessarily plan out 6 weeks in advance for my climbing. It's more like, what did I do last session? Okay, yeah, I've really struggled on that. I think I really want to focus on that particular thing in this session just to kind of drill it in. And that's where really the app's been really helpful because it reminds me of what I was going to do for that next session. And I can plan it out ahead of time, put it on the calendar, and make some notes about it and stuff like that. So,
what strikes me about just kind of that story that you just told there is that you really are focused, and it can be so easy with all of the training tools and all of the stoke and the gyms and the shiny objects and then the friends and the crew to have an idea and then just have it go completely out the window, when you walk into the gym and there's a new setup in the corner or, everybody's running laps on the rope. So having that plan going in, stating that intention, like you do in the app, other people might just write it down or, however they do it. But really having that plan that you're almost accountable to, that you're beholden to, is just a way to stay focused and on track. And I've found that for myself as well, just with so many distractions that I have in my life. Are you structuring your training and these climbing sessions with certain goals in mind, like route goals, projects, or kind of, just nebulous goals around grade? What are these all kind of rolling up to?
Yeah. So, my ultimate purpose for the climbing is outdoors. I really do enjoy it. I love climbing indoors too. If I never could climb outside ever again, I'd be perfectly fine with that too. Because I love the movement part of climbing. I think that's probably my favorite part. But I do have the goal. I never did climb a 513 my first time around that at least that I know of. Maybe I did and didn't know it, but I never have done a 13. And so that's kind of my big picture goal. And then we'll kind of see from there where that goes. And I think it's very realistic. I'm really healthy. I don't have any finger injuries or joint issues right now. I've done 12 plus in the gym. And I think if I find the right 513 outside, it's very realistic. So this year, though, I do have kind of a shorter term goal of doing another 12 outside because I haven't done a 12 outside yet. In fact, it's kind of funny because I haven't done anything harder than 11A. And I've done 5.10s and one 11A. And I'm talking about trying to do a 12A before the end of the year. But part of that is a byproduct of who I was climbing outside with on a couple of those trips, because it was the group from the gym and had a lot of beginners. And so I took the time to set up top ropes for people, make sure everybody was going to have a good time. And so I try and sneak in a 10 here or there if I could. But I did on-site in 11A, not this past time, but the previous time that I was out. So I felt good about that progress. And I felt like I had at least a couple of more letter grades in the tank. And then this 11D that I jumped on in that terrible conditions this last weekend, I really felt like I could probably work that out in a couple of sessions. So the 12A feels very realistic for this fall or winter. And because that 11D, some people used to call it 12A, and it's kind of been downgraded. So it's a really solid 11D. Right. And I really think I can get it just based on the movement and stuff like that on that kind of initial recon.
Yeah, and I think, again, for listeners who maybe are in a similar boat as you that don't have a lot of access to outdoor climbing, the reality is we're building our pyramid in the gym. And so when we get outside, just because you've, maybe done a handful of 10s and a couple of 11s up to this point, that isn't representative of your pyramid. You're climbing very hard in the gym, and it's just a matter of like, okay, can the schedule and the conditions align to go get on something that's harder? And that becomes the real kind of crux for a lot of us that also want to perform outside, but can't get a lot of days out there. It puts a little bit more pressure on those days that we can get out there. And you already mentioned kind of working through some stresses or pressures around clipping bolts or pulling up slack to clip a bolt. When you go outside, that can tend to be a little bit more amplified, sometimes a little scarier feeling when you're outside, and it's not just like the tight spacing of a gym or pads at the bottom. And I'm just curious how you're managing that side of things so that when you do get outside and you have these rare windows of opportunity, you're putting yourself in the best position to be able to send.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something I've been trying to be real intentional about too, because knowing that I'm only going to get maybe 2 or 3 outdoor sessions at the local crag in the fall and winter, based on just family stuff, schedule and everything, I don't have a lot of time to, I'm thinking more than likely I'm going to have 1 or 2 sessions to nail a 12A. Wow. And that's not a lot. And to be fair, I had all that experience years ago where I'd done hundreds and hundreds of routes. And so I know what they feel like outside. And that's part of how I know it's realistic, because I do, I'm not delusional coming in thinking, well, I climbed 12 in the gym, so I can climb 12 outside. I actually have done it. So I do know what it feels like and what it's going to take. It's a matter of getting more familiar with climbing on rock again and recognizing the holds and how to use them and that kind of a thing. So with that, obviously the clipping is something I'm being very intentional about. I know I need to be really solid with that so that the mental game is not going to be the thing holding me back when I get outside. As far as what strength I need and endurance I need to send that 12A, that I'm at least, a couple of letter grades worth above that. So It's well within my range. Yeah. And so I think that, if I can get more consistent doing 12 plus in the gym, then I'll feel pretty good about being able to get a 12 minus outside in 2 or 3 goes or a couple of sessions, that kind of a thing. And so it's going to be picking the right route. A 12A at the red is very different than a 12A on a 35-foot, slightly overhanging limestone cliff with a small roof at the top.
What suits you? Like if you were to kind of design your ideal route that you think you'll have access to within striking distance of Texas there, of Houston, what's the route that you think will be the 12A?
Yeah, I haven't picked that one yet, but this 11D that I was on, it really feels like it's going to suit me very well. It's crimps, pockets. It's a little bit overhanging, but not super steep. The super steep stuff is still feels very new to me, even though I love my heel hooks, and so that
you love your heel hooks. I was going to say, man, you're better at heel hooks than I am.
But I use heel hooks on a vertical face all the time, and
really?
rets, and I use them anytime I can find them. I love them. I think there's such an underrated tool for a lot of people, but yeah. So I think that's kind of what I'm looking for, is more something that's going to be technical and where it's going to be smaller edges and crimps and that kind of thing. And I think I'll feel better on that than something with like bad sloping handholds or pumpy roof or something like that. That's just not the style. But I guess we'll kind of see how that progresses as I build up the endurance and those kinds of things.
Yeah, well, you'll keep me posted, and I'll keep everybody else posted. There's another aspect of your background that we haven't touched on yet that I'd like to do here, and that's you've put in time as a coach, and also of a lot of interest to me, and something that I don't even know that much about, an intuitive eating coach, which I'm not even sure what that is, Jeff, but I just like to talk about that because we're talking about climbing, and there is, especially for climbing routes, there is the kind of strength to weight ratio component that can be a bit of a third rail in climbing. But knowing a little bit about your background, I think you have a very thoughtful take and some experience with that. And you even noted, having 40 pounds on your body now more than obviously when we're teenagers, we're a totally different structure. We're like bean poles. But what is intuitive eating? And just give us a bit of a background on that coaching that you've done and maybe some takeaways from that time.
Yeah, so I worked kind of a side thing as a nutritionist for 6 or 7 years, coaching people, and originally got into it thinking I was going to help people, lose weight and build muscle and all of that stuff. And this was before I got interested again in climbing. And then after getting into it, just my personality and stuff, and just the way I break things down, I'm all about like finding root causes for things. And the more I worked with people in that area, the less I liked it. And found that I really wanted to help people work on the why, the behavioral aspects of it, and that kind of thing. I started to really see excess body weight or health issues that were related to neglecting your body as a symptom, not the problem. So the problem causes the symptom of, let's say somebody has excess weight, and I don't mean excess weight like climbers think they have excess weight. I mean like actual health issues caused by excess body fat.
Obesity.
And exactly. And it's not the excess fat isn't the problem as much as it is the symptom. Like back pain, when your back hurts, it's usually that's not the problem. There's a problem that's causing your back to hurt. And if you keep addressing the pain, then you're never going to get to the root cause. And so with intuitive eating, that was something that really stuck out to me. So I don't align 100% with all the principles of it. But in general, what intuitive eating is, it's basically these 10 principles, like rejecting the diet mentality and honoring your hunger, making peace with food, learning to feel satisfaction in your eating, feeling fullness, challenging like these food rules that a lot of us have where it's like, no carbs after 6, or, I can only eat this on 1 day a week, or different rules like that we sometimes put in. And then learning to cope with your emotions kindly, and that kind of thing, respecting your body, approaching like exercise from more of a perspective where you think of it as movement, like joyful movement, rather than this thing that you have to do to beat your body into submission. And then finally, like it's interesting because the 10th principle of intuitive eating is to honor your health with gentle nutrition, which is interesting because it's about food, but that's kind of the 10th thing that you actually start looking at. And so, I'd often tell clients when they start working with me that we're going to do a lot of work on your mindset, and sometimes we might talk about food. So working as a nutritionist, that was kind of an interesting take for a lot of them. And because the food itself, like what to eat and how much to eat and all of that was not something we dealt with very often, because it was far less important than what it was that was driving excess eating, driving binge eating behaviors and those kinds of things. So again, it's like the binge eating is not the problem. It's the symptom of the problem.
Of the
And
problem.
when you address the problem, then you can fix these other things without having to try and beat yourself into submission over it.
How interesting. Yeah, that's really, I mean, the words that I'm hearing are kind of like this, like emotional, mental, the connection, the baggage that comes in life, right? We all have our baggage and our struggles, and how those manifest can come out of like what we do with our diet, or could be other substances, coping substances, or, behaviors of how we take in entertainment content, or any number of other things. And so This is a whole other episode in itself, and maybe we'll do it at some point in time, because I'm really fascinated by it. But essentially, when you're working with clients on this, or yourself, it becomes a therapy session. I mean, it's not about the food, right? It's about like what's underneath the food.
Yeah, and a lot of times there would be things where we would address things like a really common one, clean your plate club, that's what we'd call it, where they grew up and they were, parents forced them to clean their plate before they could leave the table or before they got dessert. So they were ingrained from the time that they were, a toddler to clean their plate, or they were a bad kid. And now they're 40 years old and they feel like they have to clean their plate, even if they're full, or if they don't like it. And then if you don't clean your plate, then you feel guilty. And so all these subliminal things. And then, so there's a lot of guilt and shame around food that's unnecessary, but it's all because of these different rules or different things that maybe you grew up with. Or, I had people who, they grew up with a parent who was an absolutely horrible cook, and they would literally have to force themselves to keep food down. It was that disgusting.
Wow.
And so they grew up where they completely disconnected from the joy of eating something tasty. So if you ask it, they eat something, they don't even know if it's satisfying, if it tastes good or not, because they've completely disconnected from that. And so then we work on trying to learn to find satisfaction in the food, identify flavors they like, that they don't like, things like that. And then it's like, it can be really eye-opening. Or, when you tell a person you're not a garbage disposal, if there's food on the plate, throw it away. I mean, it's being wasted if you're forcing yourself to eat it anyway. So why not just throw it in the trash? And so getting them to shift their mindset around that, or with snacking. I had somebody one time that, and this is probably something a lot of listeners can get you could apply today, but they were struggling with stopping for fast food every day after they were driving home from school. They were a teacher. And so they were trying to find, should I only limit myself to once a week, or this, or adding some kind of rule in there. And I said, no, we don't need to add a rule. You got plenty of rules. So we looked at what she ate during the day, and she basically didn't eat any snacks or anything. So we added in a snack in the morning, I think. It was something that simple. And then she quit needing to eat McDonald's on the way home. It was that simple of a fix, because we weren't addressing overeating McDonald's as the thing that we need to stop. We were addressing why she's so hungry after she walks out of school and can't wait to get home to eat something. She said, I don't even really like McDonald's. Right. But I keep finding myself eating it. And what's interesting is I apply that to my climbing. So that same thing with my climbing and my training for climbing. So if there's an area that I'm struggling with, then I am all about trying to figure out, well, what do I need to do? If I'm afraid to clip, but that doesn't mean I just need to get on hard routes with sketchy clips and just suck it up and do it. That's not the answer, at least not for me. So how can I train myself in that way? Or how can I train myself to do a better job of holding on to slopers? What are the techniques that I can learn? What are the things I can practice? Do I need to get stronger? If so, then that's okay. But I may not need to get stronger. I may just need to climb better. And so I think that approach can be so helpful when you really start thinking of things as symptoms rather than the problem, and then figuring out what the problem is. Yeah. And then going at it that way and attacking the problem. And again, going back to the journaling and reflecting, and all of those things are so helpful in that, because it's so easy to forget. I mean, you can be driving home from the gym and already forgot, now, what was the thing that I needed to work on? Or what was it that caused me those issues today? I don't remember.
Yeah, I will echo that as well. And especially across different disciplines. The Intentional Climber app, which of course we've been talking about quite a bit in this conversation, but it's hard not to, because we built it together and we're excited about it. Yeah. But one of those elements there that I really like on that journaling, the reflection feature, is that it's pinned to a different type of session. So when I finish a kilter board session and it asks me what went well and what do I want to work on, and I put that in there, I might not do another kilter session for a week, or maybe, I'm traveling or whatever, maybe it's 2 weeks. And then when I start my next kilter session, I have no idea what I did on my last session or what I wanted to do. It's been so long. I've done 4 other climbing sessions and 5 lifting sessions and 2 hangboard sessions and whatever. But I start it and I open up the app and it says, yeah, remember what went well last time is you were really towing in on steep climbs, and this time you want to work on heel hooks on marginal holds or whatever it is. And like, I don't remember making that note to myself, but it pops up. It reminds me of that. And now I am starting that session with intention, and I'm working on improving the things that I want to improve. And so a little pat on our backs there for that, because I do think that there's something incredibly valuable there, especially for self-coached climbers who aren't able to do it all day, every day, and can just remember, if you're a busy climber and you don't have somebody telling you what to do, you don't have a coach telling you what to do, then those little journal reflections are just so invaluable. And I'm curious, as we kind of wrap up this conversation here, what are those notes telling you? As you see, you're getting recaps of your notes at the end of every week in the reflections tab and all of that. Like, what patterns have you noticed recently in your climbing on things that are going well and things that you want to work on?
One of the big ones is rushing through moves. And so not getting set and positioned before moving my hands. And it's so easy to get away with it on easier climbs, things that aren't limit. But man, when you start getting on limit stuff, you can't do that. And so that's a big one.
And how do you address that? Like, so you notice that you've written yourself that note. Now, how do you apply that to a session?
Well, have you ever seen the Vertical Network coach on Instagram? He does these almost exaggerated movements of his hips on steep terrain, and he'll have usually some older climber, and nobody knows what the guy's name is. He's like, but he clearly knows what he's doing there. And I really find that stuff fascinating. And so kind of along those lines, I'll somewhat exaggerate the technique that I'm trying to work on. So yesterday, as an example, I jumped on this 11C that has some really good holds on it, some like 2-finger pockets and stuff. And it's got a steep overhanging section, but there's a lot of good places where I can position my hips, because it goes kind of up an overhang and then into a dihedral, to where if I position my hips, it makes a huge difference as far as how easy it is. So I tried to climb that thinking, how can I use as little effort as possible with my arms and hands to move up this route, even though it's overhanging. And so on something easier, I can concentrate on that. I'm not sitting there like at my limit trying to just desperately hold on to something. I'm several letter grades below, and I can really focus on that. And so that's a technique that I use a lot to work on things, is almost exaggerate. I guess really I am. I'm exaggerating the movement. And so it'd be similar to doing like a drill where you hover your hands over the hold before grabbing it. Right. You don't ever climb like that. Like, I'm not going to climb and like robotically shift my hips into position and then reach up carefully and grab the hold. That's not how you're going to climb typically. But by doing that, you sort of ingrain that concept in there at the easier level, so that then it comes more natural to move the hips first before reaching up and things like that.
Drill work is so incredible, y'all, and it's not something that I do enough. I'm starting to get into it just now a little bit more in working with Nate Drolet. There's also with Power Company Climbing, I'll shout out Chris. And Chris Hampton has a course in the Intentional Climber app that's free it's like 6 weeks to Stronger Fingers, but he also has other courses that are going to be coming into the app, but that he also has over at Power Company Climbing. And one of them kind of helps to identify what drills we might want to work on based on like a self-assessment of our movement. It's like a movement toolkit. It's a free thing that he does, and it's really, really good, and it helps to identify those. So, just hearing what you're saying there, Jeff, like for me, like I think that would really benefit me, but I wasn't even aware that maybe it would benefit me until I heard you talk about it. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And so sometimes it's hard to do those self-assessments, and it's helpful to climb with a friend or work with a coach or something to help identify those like you've been able to do.
Yeah. And, identifying some kind of technique that you can work on and drilling it in there is so helpful. I also have several people I climb with who they ask me questions about things. And so they like me to give them advice. And I found that that's been really helpful for me too, because I have to watch them, even though I would not consider myself a climbing coach by any means. Coaching kind of comes natural to me. And so I'll look and I'll watch that and share some of that about, hey, turn your hip in there, try that. No, but oh, wow, that's so much easier. I thought I didn't have enough strength, and it really was just about a hip position, things like that. And so I find that to be really helpful. Another thing, though, that is so invaluable is video. I don't see people shooting video very much at all in the gym. I shoot it all the time. I always have my tripod with me. I don't shoot everything, but man, anytime I'm getting on something where I think I'm going to learn something by watching the video, I have the video running. And it is amazing what you can learn from watching yourself climb. Even if you think that you're climbing well, you send the route, you go back and watch it, and you're like, wow, I looked absolutely terrible on that from a movement. Now, I love the movement part. For me, it's like almost artistic. And so I want my climbing to look good. That's just me. And so, but at the same time, when it looks good, it's often because you're flowing through it very smoothly and finding the best way to do it. So that's been a really, really good tool for me, because it helps me to be more intentional about it. And I like to attach the videos to my sessions in the app, because you can attach them in there, and then I can go back and look at the session where I had notes written down for a particular climb, and then I can also go watch the video, and it's all linked together, and so it makes it really easy to find it again and go back and say, okay, watch that, and then I might watch it again before I go out on that project again, watch it again. Oh, that's right. Okay, there's that spot where I just had to throw my foot out, and that was all I had to do, and then now the crux felt 2 letter grades easier, something like that. Right. So those small things, and it just makes such a difference, and it doesn't take any physical changes. It's almost instant stuff that you can do and benefit from. And I think especially 5'11", 5'12" climbers can benefit so much from that stuff.
That's a great reminder on kind of like regular sessions, because I'll often take video of my projects. And I used that a lot in Intentional Climber when I was working on Bulldog. I would take videos of every session and put it and attach it to the Bulldog project in the projects tab. And so I have like a lot of my efforts, my past goes, and the heel wasn't working here, the heel popped out. I can tell because my flagging foot was too far underneath me. It needed to be wider. And I found that incredibly useful, especially since I wasn't able to get out to the project all that often. I could review them when I went out there. I don't do it as much in the gym, but I think that's a really good idea to just start grabbing some videos and just, even if I don't review them right away, attach them to that gym. It takes like 1 second to just like attach a video, just like attach it to that session. And then, I could go back there when I'm stuck in line at, picking my kids up from school, or at some point in time, it's just useful to review it. And that isn't something that I have been doing, but I think that's actually really good advice, because it's a way that we can work on our climbing when we're not able to be climbing, or we're just on a rest day and our skin or our fingers need to recover. And I do think I agree with that. I think there is some low-hanging fruit for kind of like the intermediate type climber to do that. And can you tell me, just from your experience, like when you're reviewing a video of you, sending or not sending, what are you trying to notice, or what's kind of standing out? What should we be looking for? Because oftentimes, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'll take a video just because I'm like, I need to post something on Instagram, but I'm not really looking at it from like a perspective of like, what am I doing right, or what could I work on?
That's a really good question, because I don't shoot video to post on social media. Occasionally I do, because I have friends and family that want to see my climbing every once in a while. So maybe every 3 months I just shoot a video of me climbing on something that they'll look at and think, wow, that looks cool. Because usually they can't tell if it's a 12C or a 10A. I mean, they don't know the difference. And so, use some big overhang that has a dyno to the lip, and they're like, yeah, that's cool. But my intention, my purpose for shooting the video is strictly to watch it and see what I did right and what I did wrong. And so I look for me, I've identified certain areas where I need to work on it, where I think it's those little energy leaks that, Eric Hurst talks about, that you can plug up, and that's adjusting on holds, and whether it's grabbing a pinch and then like shifting. I don't care if it's one shift, Is that really necessary? Sometimes it is, but other times it's not. But usually, for me anyway, it's not. And I don't notice it when I'm climbing because I'm concentrating on the climbing. So I watch the video back, and so I look for that. I look, how are my feet adjusting? Where was my center of gravity? Was it below my hands? Or did I have a nice little, kind of a triangle there going on? How was I adjusting my feet? Was I moving my foot up and down like that, which is just a complete waste because I didn't even adjust it. I just bounced my foot around, wasting energy. Was I breathing? Things like that. How were my hips moving before my hands? And I'll scrub back and forth and look for those subtle details that you don't often pick up just watching it straight through. So I'll go through, and that's that coach mentality too, where I'm breaking it down like that.
And then, so you identify something. Oh, okay, my foot didn't seem very well weighted there, or I was adjusting my hand a lot on that one particular hold. Are you then kind of intentionally getting back on that route and trying to do that move in a cleaner way?
Yeah, a lot of times going kind of for that perfecting mentality. And especially if you're climbing alone, man, this is such a good tool. I do this on Saturdays. Like I said, I usually am climbing alone. I get in front of the tension board and I run my camera the whole time. I give it a try, and then I sit down and watch the video in between. I watch the details while I'm resting for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, which is another way to force me to rest before trying it again. So I'll sit down with my video, then I'll put my camera back up, start it up again, shoot the video, watch it again, and then I delete the video when I'm done if I don't need them. If I decide I don't want to go back to them again, I'll just delete them. But it gives me a good way to assess everything in between while I'm resting. I mean, I might as well. It's better than doom scrolling Instagram or something in between sessions or attempts and that kind of thing. And so that's one of the tools that I've found to be really helpful. You do have to know what to look for, though, at the same time. And so that's where I watch videos of other people, like some of these pro climbers. What is it about Janja? Not just that she's stronger than everybody, but what is she doing with her hands? And those are the things you pick up. You're like, okay, I look at my video, my hands are adjusting like this. I'm like catching it in a drag and then I'm pulling it up into a crimp. Whereas she grabs it in a crimp like it's like her hand is made out of steel. It's like, I don't have to be that strong to climb like that. I can consciously make an effort to try and duplicate that kind of movement.
Right.
Whether mine's on, she's on a 45 overhang, I'm on a vertical wall, but I can still do those same kinds of things. And so, yeah, I've learned a lot from just watching other people climbing and looking for the details, the specific, what are they doing with their feet? When they do a drop knee, what are they doing? Oh, okay, it looks like they're actually pulling their hips up into the wall when they do the drop knee, not just like turning their knee. Oh, wow, okay, let me try that. And I'll try it on a 5'10" or something like that, and that kind of thing. So those are some of the tools that I really use.
I like that. And I would say also one of the big kind of advantages of climbing somewhat often on a standardized board, like I do with the kilter, you do with the tension there, and others do with moonboard or whatever, which sometimes I do at the gym here as well, is that there's quite a vast library on the popular climbs of people doing those climbs. And so you can find somebody that's maybe similar dimensions as you, but is clearly a better climber, a more proficient climber. Oftentimes those are the videos that I'm seeing. And then now there's a direct comparison that you can do. And this isn't something that I do often, but you've just kind of reminded me that was something I had done for a while. I was in a habit of doing when I was training hard on the kilter board leading up to Bulldog. And so not only can we notice what Janja does, but we can also notice just what a V10 climber does on a V5
right.
and compare that to what we do on a V5, and there's an opportunity right there to say, oh, okay, I can see what a well executed position or move looks like here, and I can try to emulate that. And that doesn't take a whole lot of time. To your point, we can just kind of hit record and just delete it later if we don't want it.
Yeah, instead of wasting time watching other random things, you can use that downtime to either reflect on, make a note about yourself. And again, not everybody has to do this. There's times when I just go in and I don't even log my climbs. I'm like, I just want to go and climb and have fun. I really don't care what my performance is. But I do that intentionally too. I'm intentional. I've made the decision that I don't care. I just want to climb and I want to spend 90% of my time talking to my friends while we're climbing. I get in 4 routes in a 3-hour session, and then there's other times where I get in 12 routes in the 3-hour session. So
yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that as well, because I think one of the pitfalls for those of us who are like a bit type A and love documentation and technology and things like the Intentional Climber app is that then it all becomes about like the logging or the tracking, and these tools are supposed to help us to have more fun at this sport that we love. And having more fun for a lot of us is progressing and challenging ourselves and ascending and taking on hard projects and that kind of thing. And so these tools can be very helpful for that, but also they can sometimes get a little bit stressful if it becomes about the tools rather than the climbing. And so it's nice to schedule a session and just be like, just go have fun and don't write it down. I really like that. That's good beta for me to think about doing. Well, as we wrap this up, Jeff, what is on the horizon for you? We know you've got the outdoor goals, and of course you're charging away inside. Anything else that you're particularly stoked about or that you're working on here as we get into the summer season?
Yeah, I mean, this summer I'm going to be really intentional about focusing on the training adaptations that I think I need to make, especially since I'm planning to come out to the Red in October.
Yes.
And I've got to do something to get my endurance built up, because right now, I mean, it's pretty funny. I tested my grip strength on a pull-up bar. Like, how long can I dead hang from a pull-up bar?
Right.
I can barely dead hang from a pull-up bar for a minute. And that's just that is not very long considering the level I'm able to climb at.
Right.
So I would like to increase just some of those things, not for the sake of, I want to double my metric, but I just think I have a lot to gain in those areas. And so that's where my focus is going to be through the summer is really focusing on general fitness and then generally just increasing that endurance. So I'm going to be working on some doubles and triples on lead in the gym, which I think will help me with clipping when I'm pumped and all of those different things. We have some real steep walls that I can mimic some of the climbing at the Red with. Yeah. Especially doing, we've got a 63-foot wall. I can do a double on that, and it's like it's overhanging to an overhang to a roof. And so
amazing.
If I could do doubles on that on a 10 plus or something, then I'll feel pretty confident to go and have a good time on some things that are not just easy routes. I have no delusions that I'm going to go and send my hardest climb ever. But at the same time, I want to go and have fun. And then I also, I have that 512 project for our goal for the year in the fall. So I do need to build up some additional strength to get myself to where I can fumble around on a route a little bit and still have enough left to be able to send it, because I think that's going to be something I need to do. And then just, another goal is to keep improving the app. I mean, that's another big part of it, is improving it to help me with my own training selfishly, but then also apply that toward helping our users to really get the most out of it also.
No shortage of things to work on, but I really appreciate it. I mean, your hustle is inspiring. Even before you and I partnered on this app, just knowing about your journey and what you've been able to do under, really quite stressful and challenging circumstances with your wife's health and just getting back into climbing in your 50s. It's just awesome to see how focused and dedicated you are and how that's directly leading to results. And on the app side, I see that every day because we're talking all the time, and this app has come a long way since we started working on it. It's just getting better and better. And so thank you for all the hustle on that. And for those who are listening, just an open invitation to reach out to Jeff and I and let us know what you're loving, and just as importantly, or maybe even more importantly, what you're not loving. And if there's friction or bugs or things that you think the features we should add or whatever, you can just reach out to us and let us know. We'd love to continue to build this with you. Jeff and I were siloed for a while, and we're like, we got to get this thing out there and start getting some real world feedback. And fortunately, the feedback's been really positive, and we got users in 30 countries and all of that, but it can and it will get better. And thank you for all the hard work that you're putting into it to that extent.
Yeah, happy to do that. I love the climbing community, and that's really where the driving factor for this thing. It was something that I really felt like it would be extremely helpful for people like us. We can't train like an Olympian, but there's no reason we can't be more intentional with our climbing and actually do some things that will help us to make recognizable progress in various areas of our climbing. and then just really enjoy the sport more. The better you get, just the more opportunities you have, the more things are open to you. When you climb 510 and you can only climb 510, there's tons of stuff there. But now 11 and 12, now you've got these other ones. You've got so many other route options. You're not stuck with maybe a vertical thing. Now you can climb a roof, and it's like, wow, now I can climb this roof on jugs. But it's not a 14D or something, but it's still super fun. I can experience that exposure and some of those movement patterns, and that's the joy that I find with as I progress through the different grades. Is it just opens up more options and more possibilities for just enjoying more kinds of movement and that kind of thing.
Hear to that. Well, start those doubles in that steep cave, my man, and I'll see you out here at the Red in a few months.
Oh, I know. Yep.
It'll be here before you know it. And as they say, they're the biggest holds you'll ever fall off of. So just get ready. All right, y'all. That wraps things up with our friend, Jeff Ashe. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to share your journey with us. Super inspiring and really enlightening as well, man. Really, really exciting to talk with you about that. Now get back to work. I'm just kidding. Although I know you probably are working right now. Jeff is always working. Jeff and I'm always working as well. I probably work too much. Jeff probably works too much, but I think that's what makes for a good partnership, because we're like messaging each other at 2 a.m. We're like, what about this feature for a tread wall program on the app? And then we get all excited about it. And so, yeah, anyway, I hope you all got something out of this conversation. And if you haven't checked out Intentional Climber, which is the app that Jeff and I are building and have built together, you can do that for free for 2 weeks. And if you use code STRUGGLE, when you go through like the sign-up process, you also get some bonuses. It's cheaper, like per month. You get a discount if you decide to sign up, but also you get this free 6-week program to get Stronger Fingers from Chris Hampton. It's a full Power Company program that you get for free. So that's worth $100 right there. So anyway, you could load that and do that program and then check out the app. And if you don't like it, that's fine. It's not for everybody. In fact, if you're just like a climber who just kind of wants to mess around and have fun and meet friends at the gym, you probably don't need Intentional Climber app. It's really built more for like busy climbers who really want to level up, whether you're a self-coached climber or you want to load a coach plan, because we've got different coaches that we work with and some really banger coach plans in the pipeline right now with some like super famous coaches, people who have been on this show, in fact. And so if you're like wanting some accountability and you want to reflect on your sessions, if you project things and you want to send those projects faster and you want to set process goals and outcome goals and all that stuff. Anyway, that's all in the app there. And all of you early adopters, thank you so much for your feedback. You are literally helping us to build this app. We're just releasing updates constantly with your input. So for those of you who are trying it out right now, there's some bugs, and there's some like kind of early versions of features in there that are just going to get better and better as we go. And I appreciate you being along for the journey. But I told you I would also tell you about me and the struggle bus I've been on. Ooh, punch my ticket. I took a struggle bus from Melbourne, Australia, all the way to Louisville, Kentucky. Actually, that's probably the first part of the struggle, is as I'm recording this, I am jet lagged out of my freaking gourd, you guys. I've never traveled that many time zones. Here's a weird thing. We left Melbourne they call it Melbourne in Australia, Melbourne. We left that place at 10 a.m. on Sunday, and we arrived in Los Angeles at 8 a.m. on Sunday. How weird is that? Like we crossed the international date line and went back in time. It was so weird. We were making a lot of like Marty and Doc Brown Back to the Future jokes on that flight. But it was freaking bonkers because you go so many, what is it? Like it was 11-hour time difference to Los Angeles, or was it more? No, it's 18 hours. I don't know. It's a 1 billion hour time difference, you guys. Anyway, we landed and we were like, what year is it? So anyway, we're back home now in Kentucky and my body still feels like it's in Australia. So we're like, I don't know, going to bed at 3 a.m. and then waking up at noon, and it's been weird. But that's not the biggest struggle. That's just like jet lag, and those are champagne problems. By the way, I got to go to Australia and see my sister and her family. It was amazing. I got to climb in Australia. I did 1 day of climbing, if you saw on the Instagrams. I climbed with Dusty Millar, another weekend warrior. Let's go. Dusty, who was a weekend warrior from a few months ago, was gracious enough to meet myself and my son and nephew and sister in the Grampians, and we went to a wall called I Forget, which, as he explained to me, it was all the walls were shut down during the pandemic because I think they didn't want people out and potentially getting injured, and then rescue crews would have to come out and all of that, which is understandable. But they forgot to close this crag. And so I guess it was so new or whatever. And so they named it I Forget because they forgot about it. Anyway, fun little story, but also really good rock. It reminded me so much of being at the Red. I traveled 25 hours to get to the Red River Gorge, basically, but a much different landscape. It was so cool getting to the top of this wall that we were at, and the view was absolutely nuts of these cliffs and just the area around the Grampians. And then, of course, the flora and fauna are totally different and very like alien and otherworldly compared to what we have here at home. It was just a delightful, delightful time. And I climbed mostly easy stuff, and then I got on like a really hard thing that I just epicked on, and Dusty flashed, and it was so cool to be there. It was his hardest flash ever. It was just so cool to be there and witness him like digging deep and trying hard on this very bouldery kind of power endurance-y. I think the equivalent is like 12C or 12D. Hell of a flash, Dusty. Way to go. But anyway, just mostly a really fun day watching my nephew climb and my sister climb for the first time. My nephew, I take climbing whenever I see him, and he just bossed it. Just a wonderful time out there. But that wasn't the struggle. That was a delight. That was a shining little moment of the Struggle Fest, which was me throwing out my back just days before I went on this trip for no reason. You guys remember the last time I injured my back, I was out bouldering in the craft boulders in Vegas, and I took a really weird fall off of a boulder that I was trying to do, and I made a video about it and then kind of posed this hypothetical question, am I too old for bouldering? The answer is no. I went and sent Bulldog. Let's go. But then I just like threw my back out. I was visiting friends in Chicago, and then I drove home, and I was in the car for like 6 hours, and I got out, and my kids wanted to take a bike ride, and I just like went and got my bike, and I needed to pump up the tires, and so I bent over to pump up my tires, and I just kind of, I don't know, twisted it weird or something like that, and it was probably just all tight from driving, and I was dehydrated from spending a weekend with my friends and drinking beers and watching soccer and all that, and so it was a bad one. I went on some like super strong steroids to try to take care of it, and like they barely put a dent in it. It just took like almost 3 full weeks to recover. So that was rough. So because of that, I thought I was going to do all this training while I was away. I thought I was planning on running a few times a week, and I brought my lifting edge and my force board, and I was going to do like all these like power endurance workouts, and I ended up doing almost none of it. But that's okay. Life happens. That's the life of a weekend warrior. I'm not a professional climber. My livelihood does not depend on whether I can go out and send the gnar. So I just tried to have some grace and patience with myself and my body for that. And fortunately now I feel better. I feel like I can try again, and I'm home. So that's like the mini update for me. I'll do a plog in, what is it, like a week? So I'll just go through in more detail, essentially, kind of what my last month looked like. And then I've got some real serious goals for now, between now and the fall, and a pretty ambitious training plan. And I'm going to throw like a ton of volume at myself. I'm working with Nathan Drolet on this, Coach Nate Drolet, to help me kind of plan for some of my big fall objectives that'll be like this fall, but likely into the spring and next fall. I'm like shooting high, so I'm going to work my way up. But very excited about where I'm at. I'm using my Intentional Climber app to program each week out, and then I'm using the journal features to reflect on where I'm at, which has been really nice for me to see kind of where I'm at and where I'm going and remind myself of what I want to do. I've got all my goals in there as well. So yeah, I'll talk more deeply about that in the plug, but this is recording my first podcast here in like over a month, because everything else I had banked ahead of time so that I could go and really unplug on my trip, which I did, and I appreciate you all giving me that time away. But now I am back, baby, and we've got some banger episodes in the can that'll be coming out in the coming weeks, and recording more to come, and I'm just so excited, like already thinking about the fall. It's 100 degrees here in Kentucky as I record this, and like 1,000,000% humidity. It's weird to be thinking about crisp fall temperatures, but that's just that optimism that climbers have in the summertime. And of course, you know, the training that we do right now is going to be what lifts us up the wall in the autumn, in the crisp temperatures. So very excited about all that I got going on here, and I'm very grateful that I had some time away, and psyched to now be back to the grind. I hope you are grinding away or nursing injuries that you might have, like I had to do, and being kind to yourself if you are, and just being psyched out of your mind. Or if you're like lacking motivation, that's fine too. Sometimes that happens. It ebbs and wanes, but I'm sending you a ton of love and support, and have an awesome week. I will see you soon.